Hi, and welcome to the 11th Social Media Power Talk Hangout on Air. It's been 11 months, and every month since the beginning of the year, we've covered through 30 minutes some of the burning issues in the social media space. Leadership is the burning question right now, which is pretty much what we're going to face as we go towards 2015. We have two fantastic guests with me today, Tanveer Nasir from Tanveer Nasir Consulting and Anna Hoffman from Traffic Generation Cafe. We should have a lot of coffee with that, but we'll come back to that later. I'm going to start with Tanveer, who's also written a book on leadership, so his thoughts on this are pretty pertinent. It's called Leadership Vertigo, and it tackles the issue from a certain perspective. So Tanveer, please, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about your experience with leadership.
Yes, hi. So my name is Tanveer Nasir, as David pointed out. I'm an award-winning leadership writer, keynote speaker, and a coach, and I basically work with organizations to help them develop their leadership competencies so they could really become the leader that the organizations need to manage in this faster-paced, 24/7 interconnected world.
Okay, that's great. And Tanveer, you know, we're talking about leadership these days, and leadership is such a loaded word, and for many of us still in the social media space, it carries the connotations of leadership from the top down, leading from the front, you know, sort of a very dictatorial approach, which is a hang up or a holdover from the past. Right. So just tell us a little bit about your perception of it in this kind of environment.
Well, I actually find, and a lot that's what people probably notice in my writings, is that we are looking really right now at a fundamental change in how we operate. I mean, the version you're talking about, the command and control, really refers to that industrial age notion where people were pretty much just slotted into a particular role, and they were in that role for a good 20 years, and you know they get like some sort of retirement gift at the end, and that's it. We're in a more fluid environment right now where people change jobs every 3 to 5 years now, not because of lack of interest or job growth, but just because of the fluid nature of the workplace. So as a consequence, we're seeing now that the command and control style is not really working very well, and some of the more successful companies are really more collaborative, they're more open, transparent in how they communicate and connect with one another. And this actually is what we see in social media, where social media is not something where you're basically trying to control the message, but you're trying to engage with the message. You're trying to engage with those around you and find a common purpose, a common goal that people want to rally around, be a part of, because there's a shared value in that interaction. So what we're seeing a lot in social media in terms of how to be successful in using these communication channels is actually what we're seeing reflective in today's organizations in terms of how do we connect with people and create meaningful work for them to do in our organizations.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. And on that note, now we introduce Anna Hoffman. And Anna, I'm actually very glad by the conversation Nasir just brought in, because he mentioned that we have 3 or 4 or 5 different jobs. And I think you are a classic example of a person who sort of moved across industries and you picked up skills and knowledge across all of these, which you utilize to today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your experience that has actually brought you here.
Thank you so much, David. Again, this is Anna Hoffman with Traffic Generation Cafe, and as David did note very correctly, I have switched quite a few things. I've done quite a few things in my lifetime, and I have picked up a few things, which brings me to being a founder of Traffic Generation Cafe, and in some ways, hopefully I'm not overpraising myself here, but setting the tone for the industry and for my niche as far as not just the basic knowledge on traffic generation, but more importantly, how do I carry that message to the people on social media and elsewhere? And that's where it's just such an important topic to talk about, because leadership is how we represent ourselves everywhere we go, and it doesn't have to be, as David, you mentioned, dictatorial. It doesn't have to be strong and assertive. Leadership actually comes in many different ways, and in my view, it's almost as important, if not more, to know when you need to follow and when you need to let others set the tone and direct the conversation behind the scenes, versus being assertive and telling people how you would like to have it done, because most of the times that won't go very well.
Excellent. That's really brilliant. And I'm so glad you said all that, because this goes straight back to what Nasir will now tackle, because Nasir, we talk about leadership, we explain it's not dictatorial. Anna just mentioned how important it is to actually listen and also know when to take a step back. And in many ways, if we analyze this, it flies in the face of convention from the past, but it is very much what we need right now. So how do you synthesize this? What's your approach and perspective?
Well, again, we have to kind of look at what we're seeing in a lot of the studies right now. We're constantly being reminded about how there's perpetually low levels of engagement in our organization. And this is despite us having access to all this big data, to increase communication channels. So theoretically, if you think about it, we have more ways to communicate with people. We have more different tools that we can use to share our message. We have data that we are now compiling that allows for us to clearly understand the realities in our organization, or at least what we think is the reality in our organization, and yet we're continuing to see at least a decade's worth of stagnating low levels of engagement in our organization. And the reason for that is, again, because we're not realizing that we have to fundamentally change how we view our leadership. And Anna really hit the nail on the head when she said that it's not a matter of us always being the person leading the charge. We have to know that there's going to be times where we have to give that responsibility to somebody else, because they have the experience and the insights to make sure we're taking the right path, the right trajectory going forward. And that doesn't impede our ability to lead our organization as a whole, because what that demonstrates is the trust factor. And again, when you talk about social media and you talk about generating interest in your message online, that's a fundamental thing that you have to have. People have to trust what you're sharing is accurate. I mean, for anyone who's been using social media, we know how quickly misinformation gets spread online just because a source that we normally find is reliable doesn't do its due diligence, shares information, and it spreads. That misinformation, that one misstep, has a critical impact on their credibility going forward. So this is where we see, again, the benefits of social media leadership, because it's demonstrating to us what we natively have to do with our leadership in terms of making sure that we are consistent in communicating what we want to demonstrate, as well as knowing that there will be times when we're not the expert that should be looked to have the answers, and we have to delegate that out to someone else so we can make sure that whatever we are imparting is accurate and reflective of what's really going on.
Right, that's brilliant and so good about that. Okay, that's fantastic, because I think you mentioned the T word, trust. Without trust, nothing can happen.
Yep.
And Anna, ball's in your court now. Trust. How do you generate trust in what you do? Because you do so many things and you share a lot of stuff, and at the end of the day, you're also working. So essentially, in a sense, you are selling, and this is something we all do in a social media setting. We're here by intent. We don't have to be here, so we've chosen to be here. So how do you deal with the trust issue? How do you make sure it's there?
I think the most important thing here is communication and being present. Trust doesn't come naturally, obviously. You have to be there to develop it. And the most important thing that folks miss, and I see a lot of people who have built social media presence through different channels, and once their following starts growing and perpetually growing in many ways, they pretty much check out. And the trust is there in a way because we know that they have particular expertise, so we start sharing their posts because they are considered to be experts. However, without them being present there, the trust factor very quickly goes down, because what happens when people start asking questions? What happens when somebody, as you noted, might have a misconception about the content that you're posting? If you're not there to continue the conversation, it's best not to ever post it to begin with. And that's one thing that I'm learning on social media very quickly. When you post something, it's an invitation for a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street by any means. And that's unfortunately how a lot of folks treat social media. It's a channel to speak to people, but not with people, with us. And huge mistake. What I see happen all the time is, because of this one-way channeling of your content, one-way I'm entitled to it. You need to listen to me because my content is that good, right? We've all been there, and we wonder, how did these people get to where they are right now? Because they obviously have no interest in building that communication channel, building the trust, and building the leadership, and they definitely missed the point. So again, being present, like you, David, you are a perfect example of that. I know how busy you are. I know that last night you got only 4 hours of sleep and you have your huge cup of coffee with you. You know what? You're present. Whenever you post something, no matter how busy you are there up for a conversation, and that's so extremely important. People know that you are accessible, and that's one of those intangible qualities of leadership, is being able to hear, to listen, and talk with, not talk to. So I know I had a thought. What's the thought? I will come back to that. That's about it for now.
Okay, all right. Let's. I mean, you covered so many things, and thank you for mentioning it, because it's a conscious choice by me to actually engage at this level, and it's a constant challenge, I must admit. And now, and because I talk to industry, I also know how difficult it is for them to actually accept the same level of communication, which is my question to Nazir now. And Nazir, you basically advise companies and you advise people in a leadership position. And the first thing you're going to come up against is, first, I haven't got time to engage. Secondly, why should I engage? Thirdly, where's the ROI from all this engagement? Because quite rightly, people in a leadership position in a company or an organization are being judged by results, and they're constantly watched, and everything is measured. So my question to you, how do you deal with all that? These are valid questions, and we all think pretty much the same thing.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to demonstrate practically right now an example of that engagement. David, it's Tanvir is my first name. It's not Nasir's my last name. So just to clarify that, that's okay.
Well, the 4 hours sleep that Anna mentioned, they're taking that toll. I apologize.
Just a sidebar, folks. You're reminding me of my graduate supervisor, because for I think the first 5 months, everyone on his team he told by the first name except me, and I always felt like, why is he pissed at me for? I just started. So no, it was just I just. But see, here's this is the reason I'm bringing it up here is because you gave me the perfect segue to explain, well, how do I find the time for engagement and what's the ROI and so forth. Here's the thing. Right now, you and I, this is an engagement. That's the whole point. Every time, and I'm actually going to build off on something that Anna said, because I think she really pointed out something that's really important here, and that is that every time we have those conversations, it's critical that we are present to have them. Again, if you think in terms of social media, when we sign in to the various social media channels, we're intentionally saying we want to expend our time, focus, and our attention to see what people are saying and what they're saying to us and what we want to respond to. So in the context of the organization, what that means is basically so when you're going, let's say you're walking down the hallway and you bump into a colleague and they start conversing with you, that's a point of engagement. So it's not a question of, oh, I gotta block off, a certain point in time in my day to be able to interact with people. Those little moments, that's the engagement, and it could be something as simple as a 2-minute conversation. But if, as Anna said, if you're truly present, you're not like distracted, you're not thinking like you, David, only had 4 hours of sleep, need a little bit more coffee. But if you kind of put that aside and say, you know what, it's not about me right now. It's not about the fact that I'm tired and stuff. Someone here wants to have a conversation with me. They want to impart something about their day. They want to share an idea they had. They want to bring something to my attention. We got to dedicate our efforts to be present for that conversation. So it's not a question of us saying, well, we got to now block off time in my already filled day to have these points. The reality is you are having it right now. The question is, to go on what Anna said, how present are you in those conversations? And this is again where we can see the value of social media, because when we log in, we are making that intention. I'm going to be present to hear what people are saying. I'm not just going to go drop something out and then bail out. I'm really there to see what's going on, what are people talking about, and where I can be a part of that conversation.
Tanvir, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. And I think you brought up so many things here which we can actually touch upon. The constant question, I suppose, in all this, and I'm going to take it to Anna now, is the question of time, which is how do you manage it? Especially if you're running a small business, you're one person, you've got a lot of hats to wear, and there's never enough time in a day. So what is the secret?
There's no secret. I'm sorry. You kind of just have to do it. So here are a couple of suggestions. First of all, as you mentioned, you kind of need to understand the importance of this, because if you understand the importance, then it becomes more important to you to do it. When you are in social media, it's not just the fact that, oh no, now I have to do something else to add something to my already long to-do list for the day. It's something that builds up your name and your company name. It's not something that we can quite put our finger on. And as you said, when it comes down to ROE, return on investment, usually, truthfully, the only ROE that you can have is the dollar signs in your bank. So there's very little dollar signs to follow when you engage on social media. But what happens is that sometimes, even when you don't understand why, the good thing that I've learned is that look up to those who seem to understand and look up to what they do. So again, David, you're going to be my guinea pig today, right? You've got a business. You travel, you publish books, you are a busy guy, yet, for whatever reason, you take your time to engage in social media. If I'm a newcomer to social media and I wonder why, what's the point of all of this, I look up to you. I look up to other folks that run companies that are busy, much busier than I am, and yet they take their time to engage. And I see that that alone means that there is value in being in social media, right? It might be not tangible, it might not translate into dollar signs directly, but because other leaders do it, that means that it's very worth my time to do it. So that's, that's point number one, why you should do it. Now, the more practical side of it is, how do you control your presence on social media as much as you can and still get things done for your business? And one of the biggest things that I see people, one of the biggest mistakes that business owners make is trying to be everywhere, and that is such a huge, so taxing on our time, and it simply does not work. So the most important thing you can do today is to pick that one platform that you choose to be completely present on. For most of us here, it's Google Plus for many different reasons. One of the most important ones is the fact that people are present on Google Plus. You can have a conversation with someone on the other side of the world in real time, and everybody's present and engaged. People who are not present are very quickly kind of shushed to the side, for a good reason, because if you're not present, nobody wants to talk to you, right? So we choose to be on Google Plus. And what that means is that I need to have a conversation with people who want to have a conversation with me in real time, which means that for about 10 to 15 minutes, if it helps, let's build like a framework of engaging on social media, right? Let's say you have an 8-hour day, 6-hour day, 5-hour day, whatever it is for you. Take up 10 minutes per each hour just to check in. Look at what's going on. Look at your home stream. Kind of prioritize things accordingly, and just be there. Just check in every once in a while and see what's going on. It's hugely important to do that, I think. And David, you're so responsive on social media. So many other leaders are too. I can send you a message, and 5 minutes later, boom, you respond to that. That's the kind of leadership that we're trying to cultivate. Again, if you're new to social media, doing those things that other leaders are already doing is incredible. I think I'm good.
Brilliant, David. Thank you, Hannah.
If I could
Yeah,
add one
absolutely,
thing
Tanvir.
to what Anna said, I mean, there's a thing, and just to build on actually what she said, I mean, one of the things that we're obviously all struggling with right now is that we are being deluged with so much information. There's so many more emails in our inbox. There's now, I mean, there's so many companies that are now talking about actually banning access or using of emails outside of office hours, and even only limiting it for certain hours in the workday itself, because they're finding it's such a time suck now that people aren't actually able to do their work. And so one of the things that we have to recognize, and that's something that I want to again reiterate that Anna brought up, was the idea that we have to always evaluate things in terms of what is the purpose behind why we're doing it. Because again, social media, there's people who are not actively using it. When they dive right in, they can find it to be an enormous time suck, because it is at the beginning, because there's just so much going on that it's hard to know where to put stuff. And so I want to draw attention. I'm going to do a little exercise with Anna and you right now, and also with all the audience. But Anna and you can give your answer to this thing. But I want to do a little exercise to demonstrate how our brain works, so we can understand why it's important for us to understand the focus. Okay. So Anna and David, are you ready? I got a little thing I want you to do.
My brain is working, but yeah.
Okay, I'm rubbing my hands with glee here. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you both to do. Don't think about pink elephants. Okay? Don't think about pink elephants. Now, Anna and David, what are you thinking about right now?
Blue
White
elephant.
whales.
See, there's a thing that our brain has where when stuff is trying to get our attention, we can't help but focus on it. Now, if you think about any social media channel, there's so much stuff that is clearly being designed to get our attention. I mean, if you look at some of the articles that are writing about how do you get more, and Anna obviously knows a lot about this, how do you get more attention, more traffic to your site, there's a lot of these tricks that we learn of how to do it. It's almost like we're like the virtual casino where we figure out how to keep you interested and invested in sticking around. And the problem is that if we don't recognize that that's the problem, that our attention can get so easily have us distracted, then it becomes very hard for us to not know what it was the things we need to be paying attention to. What are the elements in the devices and the approaches that we really should be focusing on? So we should always be evaluating things in terms of, going back to your question about the ROI, what is the long-term goal that we're after? I mean, some cases, yes, we can find a monetary value to it, but in social media and leadership, it's more, and it's what we're seeing a lot, it's more relationship-based. It's more about building a relationship for future value and prosperity for both parties, not just for ourselves. And so in that case, what we really have to do then is make sure we're more mindful of how our brain operates in terms of how easily it can get distracted, just like that dog from Up, especially now with this information overload we're all experiencing on a daily basis. So we can always critically ask ourselves, how critical is this to the long-term objectives that we have, either for ourselves or for our organization?
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And I've got two questions now. One is directly from the stream. And Tanvir, let's begin with you on this one.
Okay.
Somebody's asking, and the name is Srikanth Kande, and Srikanth, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. What are the qualities that a person should have in order to become a leader in a company with a social media aspect?
Well, if you think about it in terms of social media aspect, one of the things you have to be is obviously an active listener. Social media is a two-way communication channel. Obviously, you're sharing information, but you have to also be listening to get the feedback from people in terms of what matters to them. And I often tell people when they look at the stuff that I write, it's very subtle, but I'm always experimenting with stuff. I'm always testing out ideas. In fact, whenever I, like the book that I just came out and the next one I'm working on, I always seed the ideas through my blog. It allows for me to understand what matters to people, what do they want to learn more about, and so forth. So from a social media perspective, it's important that you demonstrate that you have active listening. And that is in fact impacted on the number of people who follow you, because people want to follow people not just because they share good content, but also because there's the opportunity to engage, because that's ultimately what social media is about. It's about having the opportunity to know that the person on the other side of that equation is paying attention to you. They may not respond to everything you say, but if you see that your name is popping up because they're appreciating, you're sharing their content, that you're engaging with their content on the various social platforms, that shows that this is a conversational thing that's going on. The other thing too is that people have to see that you're somebody who has if you have the information that they want, that you have the ability to find the answers, it doesn't mean you're the source of the answers, but you're the person who can go and help them discover it. And that's why people are going to you. I mean, there's so, again, if we look at the number of Twitter accounts, Google Plus profiles, Facebook accounts, we can't follow and hear everybody. So we're going to selectively pick the people who we think, this is someone I want to pay attention to because their message has value, the message provides benefit to me, and it's something that's going to add to my life, so I want to listen to them. And that, again, goes back to the first point about being that kind of listener where you're really using your audience to help you understand what it is that they need to learn more about and how you can provide that information to them.
That's fantastic. Okay, sort of summing up a little bit, I mean, you both touched upon commonalities. You both talked about listening, being very real, being very open, being very human in many ways. And Tanveer, you sort of mentioned, of course, the fact that we have access to big data. We do know these days how the brain works, largely, and we make use of that knowledge. So here comes a question. You know, we all work in a social media environment. We don't have to be here. We have chosen to be here. Therefore, there's intent behind a decision. And we have all this knowledge which helps us generate trust, guide people, in effect, almost manipulate them within inverted commas. So where does that leave our sense of authenticity? If everything we do has a mechanism which we understand and we knowingly use, where is the real us? And let's begin on that one with Anna, please.
Yeah.
And I know it's a hard one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Give it to Anna. Truth is, our life, you know, when Shakespeare said that the world is stage and we're all actors, that's exactly what he meant. Our life is a improv, constant improv of everything that we do. Where's authenticity in that if we have to improv everything that we do, right? These are kind of things that you can't separate the two, in my opinion, because even if you make your social media as mechanical as I'm going to spend 10 minutes per hour on social media, that's a mechanical decision. That's a choice that you have to make. You know, for some people, it helps to do a schedule. It helps to, as you said, David, focus on specific people to start engaging with, and that, you know, and then take it from there. Those are very mechanical, systematic decisions that we have to make to maintain our business. But yet the authenticity is always there. We don't choose the tone of voice depending on who we talk to, because that's where we're trying to fit ourselves into any particular scenario versus be us at any given moment. Somebody asks us a question, you answer because this is how you think. This is not what you think they want you to think and to hear. This is how things are. So you don't need to prepare yourself to be authentic, because when you start working on your authenticity, that's where you lose it completely. So people...
Brilliant. I'll stop you there because I think it's a great answer so far. And Tanveer, same question to you, please.
Yeah, really short. I think we have to be careful that we don't confuse altruism with genuineness, that for us to be authentic or genuine means that we have to be altruistic in our actions. Humans, we got together in societies and communities not because we wanted to be selfless, but because we saw that there's a benefit. There's a symbiotic benefit to us working collectively because we have a shared value in doing that engagement. There's a shared purpose. So when we understand how to better communicate and we understand how our brain operates, the idea is not manipulation, but it is how do I communicate my message of what I want to create more effectively so those who get it and want to be a part of that vision because they see the value for themselves want to also sign on and be a part of it so that collectively we can benefit from it. So I think that's what we have to always have in our mind, that our message when we go out into these social media channels is not for everyone. It's for those who get what we're after and see the value in it and want to be a part of making that a reality.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Wow.
We're running up against time now, so we've got a question to close with and closing statements. And here's the question: leadership challenge. How would you quantify it? And let's begin with Tanveer, inverse order now, please.
Leadership challenge. Well, that's a pretty open-ended question. I guess if we're I guess if we're going to talk about in the context of today's world, I think the biggest challenge we have is twofold. First of all, we are not only having to do more with less, but we are being bombarded with increasing demands for our time and attention. And things like social media are just actually adding to it, not actually alleviating it. So I think the biggest challenge is learning how to not look at social media as being another thing to add to the pile, but how to integrate it, as we've done with email, making it a part of our everyday work lives, so it allows for us to do the work that we need to get done, as opposed to just being another add-on that we now have to address.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And Anna, same question to you. Leadership challenge, and you tackle it from a different perspective, perhaps.
I think a great thing about social media is the fact that it allows you to take your time to be deliberate about everything that you do. I've watched one of your Hangouts, very recent one, David, and one of the commentators said that she loves how you speak because of how you choose your words. You're being so deliberate about what you say. And this is such an excellent point because social media doesn't mean that even the fact that we're all saying, let's be present, let's talk, it still means that you have time that you can take to respond to any given conversation. You can think through on how do you want to lead this conversation, what's the best thing to say, how to best represent yourself and the question at point. Again, it doesn't mean that you're being any less authentic if you take your time to put some thought into it. But being deliberate is a huge asset that you have when you engage with people around you on social media, on your sites. Take that time. It's really very important.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And closing thoughts now, Tanvir, as we wrap this up, a quick statement regarding leadership and social media, or leadership and companies in social media, perhaps?
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing now in a lot of organizations is that they're now beginning to realize they can't ignore it anymore, that this is really where, not only where their customers are, but it's where their employees are. We are seeing so many times where information at companies which they thought was going to be kept inside the walls is being leaked, whether it's emails or conversations and so forth. So I think leaders now realize they have to be a part of the conversation, because that's the only way that they can have some measure of involvement in the narrative, so that others on the outside aren't controlling the narrative in terms of what their organization's value is, what it is that they're trying to create for the world at large. So I think this is one of the things we're going to be seeing more and more of, is that more organizations, leaders are going to be more receptive to social media, just because they realize that this is really a part of the digital landscape in the 21st century.
Brilliant. And closing statements, please, Anna, on the same subject.
I just wanted to make sure that people are not threatened by the fact that somebody expects them to be a leader, because you have to understand that leaders are not born. We become leaders as we educate ourselves, as we listen to other people, as we speak deliberately to other people. So my encouragement and the main takeaway probably from this is take your time. So if, for instance, you're on social media and there are so many things, so many content you're being bombarded with, take your time. I would rather see you help someone big, but help in a big way a small number of people versus help a big number of people in a small way. That's what leadership is about, choosing your battle. If you only have a certain amount of time on social media per day, focus on helping a few people, really get them, get the conversation going, really tell them what you think, and take your time with it. Make it a big, nice comment with lots of resources that they can take back. So just focus your effort on a few things that will pay off in a such bigger way than trying to do it all and be everywhere.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And with those words, we come to, unfortunately, to the end of the 11th Social Media Power Talk. That was Anna Hoffman from TrafficGenerationCafe.com and Tanvir Naseer from Tanvir Naseer Leadership. We're going towards the end of the year. There's one more next month. I'm going to give you details. It's going to be a surprise. It is the last one. It's going to be pretty important and go out with a bang. So stay tuned. This is David Amerland signing out. Bye-bye.